PSS consultancy is a collaborative work between me, Spela Petric, Dimitris Damatis, and Jasmina Weiss. Two of them are Slovenian and one of them are Greek and based in London. So this team actually joined together because of the Design Biennale in Slovenia. They reached their 50 years, and there was this curator called Jan Bolen. He proposed that why not we just have several topics where people can just respond to this open call, and then we will group people by that topic, and then they will think about new projects. So basically, I got into the group that's called Designing Life, which is more like thinking about now the technology has allowed us to design life, basically like modifying DNA and creating synthetic biology. So if it already allows us to design life, what does it mean of designing life? And so basically, I was put together with the other three, and one of them I know her from before already. And then we had this really intense discussion in London about what should we talk about. And then because we are all really interested in this shift of paradigm where like before humans think that we are the center, like we are the smartest, we are like the top of the pyramid in this biological world. While more and more research discovered that there are a lot of things that aren't the way we think it is, that potentially plants has ability to process information at a higher level than we expect, and a lot of things like that. Like a huge part of ourselves are actually bacteria. That's also another one. So we were discussing about this shift of that we are no longer the top of the pyramid. And then we start to think about, then can we think on others' behalf, like other living things' behalf? Because if they are equal to us, then how do we adjust? And then somehow we jumped to this potential that we can design sex toys for plants as a way of seeing from their perspective. And the reason why using sex is because as living creatures, we all need to reproduce. We need to reproduce. So in order to reproduce, either we clone ourselves or we have sex. And that's why we want to tackle on the topic of sex, because it's the only thing we can really relate it with the plants, because they are so different with us. And so we borrow the protocol from IDEO because they have this human-centered design, and we say, okay, if human-centered design allows us to see it from the user's perspective, then can we design a plant-centered design process that we can see it from the plant's perspective? So we have this process of interviewing the plants and finding out their problems and then trying to solve their sex problems from there. So that's the whole project. So basically, we are a fictional design consultancy where all our clients are plants, and we solve a sex problem for them. And in order to get the interview, we have to. So I remember this really cool phrase that Dimitris was saying. He said that if we cannot interview, if we cannot talk to the plants, then we can only get a second-hand interview from the plants, which is we can find it out from the scientific references and all the gardening notes, because our relation with the plants has been a very long time, and a lot of people invest a lot of time to try to get what exactly is the plant reacting to the environment. So that can actually be a very good database to build on the second-hand interview. So our interview of the plants is actually by looking at the scientific papers and find out what kind of problems they have, create a profile, which is a user profile, and then from there to design sex toys for them. And this process is actually a challenge for us because we are challenged to think that to what extent can we not thinking on our own behalf. So how do you give pleasure to plants? That's one question. Can we really know their pleasure? Can we not just designing tools that just for agriculture? Because agriculture also allows them to reproduce more, but that's for our benefit. So a lot of time you would design things for them to be easier to pollinate, but perhaps with less diversity, because you want you would like the food that's being produced by the plants have a certain quality that's stable. But from this perspective, it's very different for the plants, because as living things, we all want to be able to adapt to the environment as much as possible. That means they need to have more differences, and that's actually against our interest. So we were trying really hard to think of that way. And another thing to challenge is how not to put our glasses on. So a lot of people were looking at a dildo that we designed for the pitcher plants. They were saying that that looks horny, but then there's nothing about, that kind of human desire, nothing about that. So we're actually looking at them by looking at that shape, which is in a way neutral, and we put on our glass and thinking that, oh, it's erotic. And then everyone was having very interesting reactions when we talk, like any of our members talk about this sex toys for plants. Everyone's like imagining very strange things. So it's actually a way of us using this as provoking thoughts and to question, are we really able to think non-anthropocentric, or we're just being trapped there? And can we challenge that? Yeah. We've been thinking in that way for a long time. We've been thinking that human beings are the greatest on earth for a long time. Can we change that? Are we capable of doing that? And so this project to design sex toys for them is as a challenge for us. So it's experiments on the members of the PSS consultancy as a challenge to think otherwise, and also trying to provoke people to think otherwise as well. That I believe if you can adopt to all different perspectives, then you can see things very differently. Then there will be new discoveries. Humans are living things on this earth as well. There were a lot of people who were talking about sustainability and that we need to save the earth. But the phrase of saving the earth is more like because we as a species, we are unable to adapt to the change of the environment. So we were like the environment remain as it is. Then it becomes beneficial to think it otherwise if you think it from other species perspective, or just trying to jump out of that we are the center of the world, we are the top of the pyramid. Then you sort of see, okay, it's not about saving the earth, but it's more about letting human beings to adopt the changing environment. That sort of brings more possibilities in. So I won't say whether we should or we should not think it in that way, but just this thought experiment will be beneficial for us. That cyclamen is a very popular flower that's around the world, and it's been brought to everywhere by human beings. But it has a very interesting phenomenon that only at a certain frequency the pollen falls off efficiently, and it's called the buzz syndrome. So this buzz syndrome means that the pollen, because pollens will fall off, but for these plants they're really strange. They don't fall off at the same efficiency when it's vibrating this way or faster. So there is only a certain frequency when it's being vibrated that it will fall off efficiently. And the thing is, what results this is that the cyclamen has coupled with a bee like a very long time ago, and this bee will have their wings vibrating at that frequency, which causes the pollen to fall off. So basically, they are the perfect sex provider for cyclamen. But while cyclamen travel all over the world, we don't bring the bees with them, and they already went extinct. So basically, they couldn't really have sex efficiently. And if other insects comes, they don't really do it that way. So we designed this small vibrators which has a platform, and the insects can come onto the platform, which triggers the vibrator, vibrates the flower at that frequency. So they will be able to pollinate efficiently. Yeah, and that's how it works. For example, the pitcher plant has two different augmentations. One is a dildo, which, because pitcher plants, they eat bugs, and at the same time, bugs are their pollinators. And then there was this really interesting research in science that they discovered that the more they eat, the more seeds they have. So it's not actually directly related with how often it's being visited by the insects. That means if they eat more, they can grow better, they can have sex better. So we interviewed them, and their problem is that they want to eat, but they don't want to eat their pollinators. So we have this dildo that has algae in there that will do photosynthesis, and then the photosynthesis will allow the algae to produce nitrogen, which is, well, actually not nitrogen but nitrates, which is the nutrient for the pitcher plant. And it's like a substitute food where the dildo blocks the pitcher plant, because pitcher plants are like this, where it has a bottle and it has an opening up there where the insects can fall in. And the dildo goes into that hole, blocks its mouth, but by the algae's effort gives it substitute food, so it will be able to eat as much as possible, but not eating any of its pollinators. And then there is another augmentation on the flower, which we call it the cock ring for the flower, and it produces heat and also has blood sac on it. So because pitcher plant only use nectar to attract insects, and there are certain insects that are being attracted by heat and blood, so that allows them to attract different pollinators in different environments. So that sort of stimulates them a little bit, yeah. So the balloon case is the curcuma, which is within the family of ginger. So curcuma is a kind of very popular cut flower around July. So you can find them in the flower shops in July, and they're originally from Thailand. The thing is, because it's been reproduced by human a lot, and a lot of subspecies in that group has odd numbers of chromosomes. So that means they are unable to create pollen. And also for human being, the cut flowers, the human want them to look all the same, because that's like a quality control. They don't want them to look all different. So actually, we prefer them to be clones. And because they don't have flowers, they can only reproduce with their rhizome. And their rhizome are like clones. Every plant that grows from the rhizome, they were genetically the same. So we want to help them to solve that problem. We want them to have more genetic diversity while transporting. So this balloon is actually a weather balloon that will take the rhizome all the way where there's very thin atmosphere and a lot of cosmic radiation. And the cosmic radiation are very high energy radiations, and they will cut the DNA and make them mutate. So when the rhizome is at the edge of the Earth, it will be mutating by the cosmic rays, while the balloon will explode when because of the pressure goes lower and the temperature goes slightly higher around that area, they will explode and the rhizome will fall back to the earth, to a new location with potentially a new set of genes. Yeah.